Sonic Lab
TV.
This is the Juno DI. Currently it's the newest in the Juno range, which has been around for many years. It started out with the Juno 6, which was a programmable analog polysynth, which was unheard of for the price back in the day, going on through the Juno 106, Alpha Junos, then the Juno G, Juno Stage, Juno D, and now this little chap. There's a lot of stuff that it can do, and it does access the core technology for making voice sounds from the Fantom G range. So there is actually a very powerful sound engine in here. The first thing you notice when you get it out of the box is just how incredibly light this thing is. And when you consider it's got a 5-octave 61-key keyboard, that's no mean achievement. Part of the weight loss is obviously due to the fact that there's no internal power supply. You can run this, in fact, off 8 AA batteries, so if you want to believe the marketing hype and do the gig in the park or on the bus, you can. You might also think that because of its weight, it must be really shoddily made, but in fact it's not. It's quite robust. The keyboard is a light action synth style keyboard. It seems to have a kind of limited travel, so it's a slightly shorter travel than your standard keyboard, and there's no aftertouch. So let's take a look at the specifications. 128 note polyphony, up to 16-part multi-timbral. These include the very quick access dual, layer and split modes that you can access via the front panel for quick setup of performances. 64 megabytes of wave ROM, 1082 onboard presets with 256 additional General MIDI 2 patches, 20 rhythm sets plus another 9 GM2 patches, 64 performances, 128 user patches, 8 user rhythm sets, 64 performances and 100 favourites, which are sort of quick ways to access the sounds you like. You've also got access to 79 effects types over 3 dedicated effects units. There's also a mic input, which you can also apply reverb to. As if that wasn't enough, you get playback over USB of standard MIDI files, AIFF, WAV and MP3s, so you can run a backing track on this and sing along and play along. There's also a separate stereo external audio input. Phew, that's a load! What does it sound like though? First thing to mention about the Juno DI is that it is essentially a preset machine. You do obviously get access to the common parameters via the sound modifier knobs over here on the right hand side, but the 1,000+ patches are only really tweakable by that on the front panel. However, plug in a USB or a MIDI cable and use the included DI editor and you can get much deeper access to the synth parameters. It's not a beautiful thing and it's a bit clunky, but it does let you get in there and tweak, and you can edit both the patches and the performances and the general setup of the synth. Sounds are organised in instrument type. We've got rhythm, piano, organ, guitar, bass, orchestral world, brass, vocal pad, synth. Each bank has a number of different presets going up to at least, certainly on the synth one, 352. These do include, however, a whole bunch of general MIDI banks. Remember, there are only 64 megs of wave ROM on this instrument, so some of the sample sets are a little bit stretched. The piano, however, is really worth a special mention. There's also some pretty nice strings. I also hate for myself for saying it, but there's actually some pretty good guitar tones due to the Cosm effects modelling that's in this as well. Some nice electric pianos. Pads and vocal sounds. Look, with over 1,000 patches in this thing, there's no way I'm going to go through all of them and show you them. But suffice to say, there are quite a lot of good ones in here, but there are some real dodos too, as you can imagine. But on the whole, they're of a generally good quality. The rhythms patches, although not bad, I still don't really understand why Roland don't put just emulations of their classic 808, 909s and all of those ones. They've got such a legacy of these things, but ho-hum. While we're on the subject of rhythm, there's some pretty cool things you can do with all of the voices in each of the 29 rhythm setups. If you tweak any of the sound modify parameters, here I'm affecting the cutoff, it only affects the voice that you're currently triggering. So you can set up and modify quite a lot of sounds just within the one kit. Another cool feature that you got here is you've also got a 6-part rhythm preset rhythm playback system. So selecting your kit by pressing the rhythm button, then pressing the song player rhythm pattern button here brings up 6 pads, and there's 24 different variations. Let's start here. They're not going to set the world alight with your record productions, but they may well be good enough to get you something that you can jam along to. Let's just have a quick look and see how they work. So really, we've got drum and bass here. This indicates I'm playing pattern 1, pattern 2. So if I want to jam along with it, I select my sound. Really handy, bound to get the juices flowing, just kind of maybe get you going with a song idea without firing up the computer. There's actually so much this synth has got to offer, it's going to be pretty hard for me to fit it all into a single review, but here's a couple more front panel highlights. This dedicated super layer button takes a fairly ordinary single wave lead. Pressing it brings up this temporary performance mode, which gives you the opportunity to layer up to 5 instances of the same patch and detune it. Another good one is the chord memory button. Switch it on and every note on the keyboard plays a different kind of chord, which is velocity sensitive. You can set the chords to be one of 16 different kind of chord presets, and you can have the roll type equals up, down, or alternating. There's a D-beam which has an expression mode and can be assignable to a variety of parameters. There's also this bizarre solo synth instrument, which, well, take a listen. Plugging a mic into the back of the Juno DI, like I've got here, and turning up the level, brings the mic back mix into the overall output. Pressing the reverb button here adds a predetermined set in the global settings effect. I've got various different algorithms and balances I can set here. These effect settings are stored in the global memory. Unfortunately, you can't recall them on a song-by-song basis, which would have been nice, because obviously if you've got a different song, you might want a different vocal sound. Something else perhaps that they could have put across the mic input is a compressor, limiter and EQ. That would have helped them sweeten up the sound quite a bit too. There is also a vocoder built into the Juno DI, but it's not really up to much. We should quickly take a look at the song player section of the Juno DI as well. You access this by plugging in a memory stick into the supplied USB slot. You then press the song list on the song player section, and that gives you the list of all the songs that you've got in memory. I've got a couple of MIDI files and an MP3 here. This is a MIDI file. Now what you can do with this is have a preset mute facility, so it can mute out certain patches in the MIDI file, or certain lines in the MIDI file, and that's accessed by pressing the C-1 button. I've set this up, and this is in the global settings. It gets rid of parts 4 and 5, which appear to take the melody. So I could sing or play along on top of this using the keyboard however I want. You have the same facility with MP3s, although this is a bit hit and miss. In this instance, I've got a Blue Cantrell MP3. Just play this. Just fast forward it. where you can hear she's singing. It works on a sort of cancelling the centre signal out. So quite useful, and certainly a welcome addition if you're going to use this in a live situation. So just to finish up, let's take a look around the back. Here's on-off switch, a 9-volt DC input, which is a standard power supply, USB connectivity for MIDI functions on the computer. You've got headphones out, stereo audio out, got a stereo mini jack in, which allows you to feed an external line source into it and have that present at the audio output. There's a mic input here, which unfortunately is just on a 1/4-inch jack. It'd be nice to see maybe a combi connector with an XLR on it. A sustain pedal, which is really useful. A lot of these sounds really need a sustain pedal. MIDI in and MIDI out. To be honest, I wasn't really looking forward to doing this review. I thought I would struggle to find enough good things to say about it to fill a review. As it turns out, it's quite the opposite. I've sort of run out of time. There are some bad things about this keyboard which are worth mentioning. I think the keyboard itself, the feel and the short travel, make it harder to play some of the great sounds that are on board, the pianos and the responsive things. It's sort of quite hard to get the feel right, although you can edit the curves. Although Roland have done a pretty good job of creating a keyboard that is fun to play. Once you're flicking through presets and getting hold of all the different sounds, pressing the chord memory, the arpeggiator, the rhythm parts, you kind of get the juices flowing, and it really is a keyboard that aids creativity. Okay, some of the sounds in there aren't going to please the synth purists. You're not going to get a lot of signature sounds out of it, but you get a lot of sounds that are going to provide the meat and potatoes, the pads, the strings, the organs, the pianos, the kind of stuff that we all need from time to time. At $799 US and £549 UK pounds, I think this is actually a pretty good deal. And bear in mind, you're going to find this cheaper on the street.